Hello and welcome to the first episode of 7AI's The Cybersecurity Bucket List, a podcast dedicated to looking at the future of security in a world where defenders can get out of the day-to-day and do things in a more proactive and strategic way. My name is Nate Burke. I am the CMO of 7AI, and joining me, as always, is 7AI's CEO and co-founder, Lior Div. Welcome, Lior.
Hi Nate, how are you?
Since this is our first episode, I think it probably makes sense to explain why we are doing this in the first place. But before we do that, maybe we give a little background on who we are and why people should listen. So, Lior, who are you and why should people listen?
That's a good question. I think that I started my career and my love to cybersecurity many years ago. I joined the army in Israel many years ago. I joined a unit called the 8200 unit. Back then it was like super secret and nobody heard about that unit. This unit is the equivalent to the NSA here. And after basically 6 years there, received the Medal of Honor in the army, I left. And basically a few years later, I had my own company, but I basically joined the Mossad. This is the equivalent to the CIA here. In both of our organization, basically we were focusing on the offensive side of the house. And you need to think about it as almost how you take military and government goals and execute them by using lines of code. Back then, it was very secret. Nobody heard about it. And I think that many people were not aware that those capabilities are actually exist. And the thing that changed everything for me was late in 2010 when Stuxnet, the attack on the nuclear facility in Iran, became public, and everybody starting to hear that actually it's not just line of code. It's actually you can create an effect in the physical world. And I think that was the point in time that things starting to change in a dramatic way. Later on, 2011 come with a list of attack that everybody heard about it, all the way from the Target and the Sony attack. And for us, that was a point in time that we said, okay, we have so much knowledge about how the bad guys are operating. We have to take this knowledge and apply it into kind of the hands of the good people. And that led us to build the Cyber Reason. We built a company for more than 10 years. We took it from basically an idea to a massive company. And a few years ago, basically 2 years ago, I left. And we were in a point in time that we asked ourselves, it's like, okay, are we going to build another company or what we should do next? And for us, it was really about thinking what the bad guys are doing. And if the bad guys are actually going to leverage Gen AI, and it's not just a buzzword that many VCs are using, then we knew that it's going to affect the industry in a massive way. And for us, that was kind of a point in time that we said, okay, we have to test if Gen AI is a big thing, and if the hackers are actually going to leverage it. And once we got the conviction that, yes, they're moving to this direction, we knew that we have to do something about it. We have to build a company, in a sense, to take the power of Gen AI into the hands of the defenders. And I believe that we're going to talk about it a lot in the upcoming episodes. So Nate, who are you and why people should listen to you?
Okay, where do I start? My name is Nate Burke. I am the CMO here. Before this, I've done, I want to say it's 5 now. It's 5 cybersecurity startups, 2 others, but a few of them early on. My first one was a company called CloudLock. It was an early CASB before that was actually a term. Most notably, I was the first US employee at Exonius. I was there for over 6 years, and I left when we hit 100 million in ARR. And actually, I'll go back one. Before that, I was at a company called Hexadite, early source solution. We got acquired by Microsoft. So I've done several cybersecurity startups from the very beginning. And now I'm here at 7AI. And what I'll also say is Every time I've been at a cyber startup, I've threatened to do a podcast. And I've done a lot of podcasts as a guest, but when I arrived here at 7AI and started having conversations about AI with security teams, I realized there's a lot to learn. And I didn't see a lot of podcasts out there that actually give valuable information on this idea of using AI agents in security. And I thought, hey, why not us? So here we are. All right, time for AI and cyber in the news. The first thing we'll cover in each episode is one AI/cyber related news story. And I think this week, the best story that I saw, it's a very long one, you should see it here if I edit it, is from Chris Hughes on his Substack. And as you see here, this is an article called Agentic AI's Intersection with Cybersecurity. And a few key points that Chris covers are what is Agentic AI, giving a definition, the Gartner prediction that by 2028, nearly 1/3 of all interactions with Gen AI services will use action models and autonomous agents for task completion. Then why Agentic AI is so top of mind, including the idea of services as software. And actually, that's a good point for me to pause here, Lior, because this is something you've been talking about lately. What does it mean when you see the term services as a software?
Yeah, I think that many years ago when Salesforce came, the idea of software as a service was basically a novel thing, a new thing. And basically, they're not just invented a new way to take software into the hands of the users. Basically, they invented a new business model with the SaaS model, and counting ARR and subscription. And basically, it's moved us from licensing and basically buying CDs and installing on servers in our kind of farm of servers to acquire something in the cloud. And that thing, in the past 15 years changed everything that we know, changed the way that we consume software, changed the way that we interact with software. And that was a massive change that basically reshaped kind of the way that we think about software and how we consume it. I think that right now, with the introduction of Gen AI and the agentic concept, things gonna shift dramatically to something that we called services as a software. So basically, it's a reverse SaaS, and the simple way to understand it is many things that we used to buy from people. That actually this is services that we used to buy from people, that people were kind of doing it because the software could not achieve those missions. Now with the agentic approach and with Gen AI, we can actually convince software to do work that human used to do. And this is the reason that basically what we're going to buy services that actually done by a software. And this is kind of the services as a software revolution that we're going to see in the upcoming years. It's important to say that we're going to see it not just in security. We're going to see it all over in every aspect of our day-to-day and life.
So another point that Chris covers in his article is the idea of using AI to improve security outcomes. And that's something we've talked a lot about and we've heard a lot. And I think you hear now a lot of practitioners saying, sell me security outcomes, not product features. So Lior, talk a little bit about that. What do they mean by that? And what does it mean for using AI for security outcomes?
Yeah, so for many years, when you hear founders are pitching new software, they're saying, "Hey, I have this feature that it's actually going to change your life, and this feature enable you to do this and that, and it's much better than the previous one." And for many people, and sometimes those features are, super unique and changing the life, but if you really think about what people want, they want to achieve an outcome. They're not buying a software in order just to improve and have another feature that they're going to have another person in their team needs to manage. Because if you think about it, every time that we're buying software, we need to add a layer of people that managing this software, interacting with software. So as the stack become bigger and bigger, and right now when I'm speaking with different CISO, they are talking about between 40 to 50 type of systems or software that they bought, and they need to manage all of that thing. So it's become very quickly very complicated, and to add another feature is not necessary adding kind of a better outcome and a better result to their ability to protect their organization. So now there is a switch to really talk about how can I protect my environment better, and not just how to layer another stack of software, and basically what can be the outcome that I can get and what's going to be effect on my environment that will make my environment much more secure. And I think that this is a change of way of thinking. So instead of layering just another trick, is actually how we're making the environment more secure by providing a specific outcome.
Okay, so lastly, and I'm going to quote it here, so pardon me as I look aside here, I want to talk about Chris's assertion that, quote, the potential for AI agents in SecOps is tremendous, from phishing, malware, credential compromise, lateral movement, incident response, and much more. AI agents could create or even act on previously curated incident response playbooks and plans to identify and gather relevant artifacts, enrich incoming alerts, use threat intel, identify impacted system, isolate, triage, remediate, and ultimately report on the full timeline and details of the incident as well as actions taken. So what is this idea of AI agents that make it so appealing to SecOps, and how can defenders separate the marketing buzzwords from what's real today?
Yeah, I think that in order to understand it, we have to understand what is agent and what is agentic. And we have to admit before we're even talking about it that agentic is a weird word that I am not sure that actually exists. But this is something that I believe NVIDIA invented, and we're going to go with it. It's important to say that when we're thinking about AI agent, this is not the EDR agent that we used to see. Basically, this is not a piece of software that we're installing on a single machine and spread it across the organization. Actually, this is a piece of LLM that's sitting in the cloud, have a specific mission and access to a specific tools, usually called by an API calls, in order to achieve this mission. And usually those agents have a very specific goal in mind, and if you craft them correctly, they can be very effective of solving a specific problem and preventing hallucination and many of the problems that we see when we're just using Gen AI as is. When we think about it, it's like many people are thinking that this is something that will come in the future. But to be honest, here at 7AI, we started with a very simple agent. And once we saw kind of that we have the ability to build those simple agents, we start to combine them to something that we call a swarm of agent that enable us to solve very complex, basically security problem. And one thing that surprised me kind of the most is with my previous company, it took us almost 3 years to reach to where we are right now. And because the use of AI and Gen AI and those agents and combine them together, we are already in a point in time that we can solve a very complex problem using those agents. And for me, it was a surprise because I thought that this is something that will come in the upcoming few years. But to be honest, it's actually here and now.
Now it is time for the interview. So we will move on to the segment where each week we will do an interview with someone that's an innovator in cybersecurity. And surprise, Lior, you're this week's guest. So, all right, Lior, welcome to your own podcast.
Thank
So
you.
you gave your background before, talking about your experience in offensive security and then founding Cybereason. Now you're back at it with 7AI. And I think this really fits with what we're trying to do in this segment, which is talking to someone that's on the forefront in innovating in cybersecurity. So my question for you is, how did you arrive at the idea behind 7AI? What made you realize that AI applied to cyber was something that is a leap forward instead of just an incremental gain, and something that is entirely different?
Yeah, so I think that it's a combination of two things. The first one is actually what we did is instead of asking ourselves, it's like, okay, what type of feature do we need to build? And we just talked about feature versus outcome. We actually said, let's go all the way back to what the bad guys are doing with this technology, what the bad guys are doing with Gen AI. And let's figure out if the bad guys is already starting to use Gen AI in order to attack us, in order to improve their tactics and techniques. And we invested a lot of time to understand what China is doing, what Russia is doing, what different ransomware group in Russia is doing. And once we realize that there is a massive adoption of Gen AI, and it's starting with the very basic stuff. You think about it as impersonation and a very crafted and personalized email, all the way to actually starting to write malware using Gen AI. So once we started to see this move of those groups, we realized a few things. One, this is not something that's going to go away. This is something that they're going to keep investing. And once the bad guys is basically starting to adopt new technology, you know that they're going to keep investing in it and investing in it till they're going to perfect it. The second thing is the belief that they're going to start moving from the type of attack that we saw in the past, and I'm referring to the low and slow attack, to something that we call the fast and furious. So because they have those capability, they're gonna try to attack us again and again and again and again till they are successful, and they're less care about if you manage to discover them the first time. They're just gonna keep trying and trying and trying. That was kind of our assumption in the beginning of the year, and to be honest, through kind of the progress, the year progressed, we started to see specifically ransomware group starting to adopt this method and become more and more aggressive. And for us, this is kind of was the point in time that we said, okay, if the bad guys are adopting Gen AI in such a massive way, we have to do something about it, and we have to give kind of the defenders the ability to protect. And it's important to say it's not to protect against Gen AI attacks, it's actually to protect against attackers that evolving and become more and more aggressive, and they're becoming more aggressive because they have the Gen AI on their side and they're leveraging it. So it's a common mistake that people are thinking of, hey, they're creating a Gen AI attack, we're creating a Gen AI defense. I don't think that this is kind of how the world gonna work. Is actually the latter, as I said. The second thing that was for us changing the way that we are thinking is the ability to leverage Gen AI and building those agents and the time that it takes to build the agent. So we realized that it's actually fairly very fast, and the ability to start creating a very specific outcome to a customer, even if they are not attacked by a Gen AI attackers, even just they need to do their basic, we're improving their kind of efficiency in a massive way already. And we saved a lot of time to people. And it's important to say, we didn't replace the people. We just let the people do what people are very good at, and basically let the AI do the thing that the AI is very good at. And this separation is actually starting to make a lot of sense by us shifting people up and letting people be good at what they should be.
All right, and now it is time for the title segment, the Cybersecurity Bucket List. We were at reInvent in Vegas. We were sitting at the hotel lobby, and you came up with this idea. You mentioned this thought of a cybersecurity bucket list. What did you mean by that?
From the beginning of the year, we spoke with a lot of people in the industry. When I'm saying a lot, this is almost more than 200 conversations that we count with different type of people. Most of them are, it's like all of them are in the US. Different type of CISO of different companies, different teams. So many conversations. And it was one thing that we were hearing again and again from different groups. This is kind of what they want to do, but they can't because they have to do the basic. And they have this bucket list of the thing that I wish that I could do, all the way from hunting and other things, that they're saying it's like, this is the thing that if my team, and I have already a very talented team, but if they only had the time to do things, this is kind of the list of things that I have on my bucket list to let them do. And that's starting the conversation of, it's like, okay, what if the AI will take the boring stuff? The AI will take the thing that your team is currently doing, and you will be able to fulfill the bucket list that you want. And that's basically started to resonate very well with people because they have a very talented people that not doing a very talented day-to-day job because they have to do the math that they have to do. So suddenly we free up a lot of their time and let them basically fulfill this bucket list. And for us, it was a little bit funny, but to be honest, on a serious note, it was very nice to see those teams are evolving and starting to become much more basically aggressive in the way that they are protecting the organization because they have more time and they can fulfill the bucket list that they have.
So yeah, I love that idea. I love the concept. It's funny, like in my past at other companies, we would always talk about what do people always want to get around to, and it was always threat hunting. And I would say, threat hunting is like the Hawaiian vacation of cybersecurity, where you get the poster on the wall and you always want to get there, but no one ever gets around to it. But I actually love the term cybersecurity bucket list, so we're going to go with that, and we'll talk about it each week with every guest. But you know what? Now that I think about it, what were your impressions of reInvent? Tell me about some of the conversations you had.
Yeah, we had multiple conversation, and this is a good way to say thank you to our partners at AWS. We had multiple conversation with multiple teams, security teams, a lot of them super sophisticated, and there is a very interesting dynamic that we see right now that I don't think that I ever saw in the cybersecurity space. Is there is a almost unanimous consensus that everything that's happening with Gen AI right now is inevitable. So, and you have the people that are a little bit afraid of it, but they still believe that that will happen, and the people that actually leaning in heavily, and they're not just saying that it's inevitable, what they're saying is, hey, we have to be part of this movement, we have to understand it, and we have to push kind of our team to become better at leveraging those technology, because we understand the bad guys are leveraging those technology. So we don't want to stay behind. So I think that all in all, if I need to summarize kind of our interaction, is if I look 3 years from now, what we're going to have, we're going to have chief security officers that actually are part of this movement, and we're going to have people that stayed behind. By the way, that's going to happen on the attacker side of the house. It's going to be different type of attackers that already moved to the Gen AI, and they are going to be the most aggressive one, and it's going to still be the one that stayed behind. So all in all, I think that kind of it's inevitable that the move to Gen AI will happen, and I think that it's going to happen faster than we think, because that thing is starting to move in AI speed, and I see it kind of in our own company, the ability for us to move faster than we ever managed to move, and that's going to be basically kind of another thing that we saw, a big difference between companies that they are AI native versus companies that they are adopting AI but they're not AI native.
All right. I think that's it. I think that wraps up our first episode. Thank you, Lior.
Perfect. It was pleasure, Nate, and I hope this is first out of many to come.
We'll be having guests every week in every episode. If you have ideas for guests, let us know. Make sure that you subscribe and do all that stuff that every podcast says to do. If you're watching it right now, you're probably watching it on YouTube, LinkedIn, whatever. But soon you'll find one spot where you can see every episode. But please let us know what you think. Give us suggestions. Give us ideas for guests. And check us out. We're 7AI, 7AI.com. Thank you so much.